I've got to ask you a huge favor. By all means, continue taking your wife down. But can you try not to knock her up anymore? This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition. Short Stories, Synchronicity, Part 1. 2 days before the round table, and 6 months after the end of Resurrection, the timelines of our couples in limbo had finally aligned. The leaders of the notorious 5 families decided that it was time to bring the family together, heal some wounds, celebrate some wins. They also knew that the impending round table was going to be real painful and shocking for some, a relief and a vindication for others, and it had the potential to result in lights out for some others. So at Angela and Stephanie's estate in Dallas, the female gang was all there. The Queen Mother called the family gathering to order by saying, ladies, it looks like we are all here. I haven't seen some of you all in months. I've been working real hard. The families have been working really hard. Our lives have been turned upside down. We've been separated by necessity, and we've lost a few of the ones we love most. Everybody looked at Tru, remembering Big Wood, and Angela, remembering Miss Bernie. The Queen Mother continued saying, and I know that all isn't right in everybody's world. So it's not easy for you all to celebrate right now with missing children, divorces that are still fresh, and one of our own locked down on 23 and 1. The look on Angela, Anya, Regina, Natalia, Star, Chantal, and Simone's faces said that the Queen Mother's statement hit its marks. She said, you know, I have no problem with addressing elephants in any room. In a few days, the heads of these families are going to sit down at another round table. Some of you will be present and some of you will not. But all of you ladies will either be directly impacted by what's revealed at that round table, or someone that you love will be. And they'll need your support. They'll need your head in the game. You may have to put aside your hurt feelings, your sadness and grief, your discontentment, and any hard feelings you might be harboring. She looked directly at Angela when she said that part. She continued saying, we are gathered here today to power up, ladies, to catch up, lean on one another, lick our wounds together, encourage one another, recharge, and prepare to play the hands that life has dealt us. Eat, drink, talk. Catherine, Stephanie, and I are here to fill in as many blanks as we can. And then the ladies did just that. They mixed, they mingled, showed pictures of their new babies because there were quite a few. They laughed, they talked, they hugged, they cried. At that same time, in Puerto Rico, a similar gathering was being held in one of the newly renovated back rooms of Bellamy's, the recently acquired Lopez nightclub. The fellas were mixing and mingling there too. They were waiting for the last few stragglers before Manny, Q, Idra, and Alejandro gave their pep talks in preparation for the round table. When LJ walked in, he was pleased to see what Manny had done with the place. All he could do was shake his head at the fact that Manny was almost forced to buy Bellamy's because his baby sister Rennie had showed her whole and entire behind months earlier when the ex-lieutenant, now demoted soldier, Layla had played in her face with stacks, and Rennie had opened up a can of whoop behind on Layla and her entire crew after enlisting the assistance of one of the barmaids to level the playing field and slip one of her concoctions in their drinks. Manny had let Rennie have that. Apparently he'd owed Rennie a favor, but to appease the club owner and protect the reputation of his organization, he had to ensure that everyone who was in or working at the club had an incentive to keep what they saw to themselves. He couldn't have people running around the island talking about how a civilian had summarily put them paws on an entire crew of Lopez soldiers and their lieutenant. Lopez organization employees had always been safe at Bellamy's. He had a relationship and an arrangement with the previous owner. But when Rennie had suggested that the 5 families needed their own personal place where they could party and BS that was separate and apart from the neutral zone in Miami called the Underground, Manny saw the wisdom in the idea, and Bellamy's, while the name had remained the same, was now under new management, gutted and completely redone. All of the staff on the premises had been replaced with individuals who are affiliated. Security was top-notch, and it was the perfect place for this gathering. As LJ admired the new digs, he was captivated by the songstress in the bandstand who was singing one of his favorite Mariah Carey songs. As she sung, his mind went back in time to the first time he'd heard his ex-wife sing that particular song at a karaoke night. The slip and the thought had him shaking himself back into the present. He headed to the back room where the gang was all there. In the parking lot, the final guest had arrived and was preparing himself to make his grand re-entrance. Today was the day that all of the fellas were going to find out that he was alive and well. This was both his re-entrance into the world and his exit from the life. The moment was bittersweet. He had wanted nothing more than to retire permanently from the game. The only things that he actually wanted more than that was to be able to retire without being in hiding and to be able to enjoy that retirement with his wife and his son. He'd gotten some of what he wanted. The jury was still out on the wife part. Over the last 6 months, he'd done his biggest one. Neither his limp nor his aphasia had stopped him from being able to put his murder game down. And as much as he wanted his girl out of the life, he'd done everything in his power to make things right for her, to put the power and the decision back in her hands, to make it as safe as it could actually be for her to do the job that she clearly loved. The round table would be her re-entry to the life, his final formal exit from it, and prayerfully, it will restore some order in his best friend and brother's household. The big man exited the chauffeured car, and for the first time, a few months shy from a year, he entered a building completely without the aid of a cane. He would probably have the limp that he was sporting for the rest of his life, but he didn't mind. All it did was add to his swagger. He entered into the back of the club and slipped unseen into the back room. The minute he cleared the threshold, though, all eyes were on him, and most of the men in that room looked like they had seen a ghost. It still amazed him that even with all the work he put in over the last few months, there were still very few people who knew that he was alive. When the Five family said that information was provided on a need-to-know basis, they meant that. In the soundproof room, Manny didn't really need to raise his voice to get everyone's attention. He said, all right, niggas. By some of your reactions, I take it that my men have been doing their damn jobs, keeping their damn mouths shut and respecting the order of things. Your eyes are not deceiving you. That is the man, Big Wood, in the flesh. You know what I always say. Real men bend, but they never break. Now, let's get this show on the road. I promised that I would make this easy for some of y'all. So I'm gonna get the formalities out of the way. Obviously, there's a man missing. I won't be able to explain that until after the round table in 2 days. Mind your business and keep doing your jobs. When the round table concludes, there's gonna be some new sheriffs in town. Now that all minds and hearts are clear where the truth is concerned, there will be some promotions in the Lopez and St. James organizations. They'll be announced at the round table and they'll take effect immediately after. And there was absolutely no confusion around whether Emmanuel Lopez was referring to the truth in comparison to a lie or whether he was talking about the truth. Because as he said it, he made eye contact with Big Wood, the General Stacks, and Brutal Bosch. Manny said, I've been in this business for a long time. And I ain't met a realer nigga than the truth. And neither will any of you. As far as I'm concerned, her balls are the biggest ones in any room, even when she ain't in it. And all of the men in the room chuckled. Because while they didn't know the full scope of what the truth had done in the last few weeks, the rumors had abounded. And they'd quickly, dramatically, and summarily drowned out any rumors about who her baby's father was, who she was choosing, and whether she was in or out. While all the men in the room were laughing, there were several who were not. Wood and Bosch had made eye contact, respectfully nodded at one another, and looked away. Q didn't laugh because he knew that the truce between Wood and Bosch was tenuous at best. It wouldn't take much at all for Big Wood to renege on the promise he'd made. He'd made it to keep the peace, but he ain't owe Bosch a damn thing. And every man in that room knew that Bosch was lucky to be alive. Q turned his attention back to Manny when he heard him say that the identity of the anteater will not be revealed, but we owe a debt to that individual that we will never be able to repay. Anywhere that you see the moniker H-E-M, him, tread lightly, check the file, and Check in with your commanding officer before you do a damn thing. Now to the personal. The next generation has grown considerably. My nieces have made considerable contributions to the world's population. None more than my niece Angela. He looked at Q and said, nephew, I'd never attempt to tell a man what to do in his marriage, but I've got to ask you a huge favor. By all means, continue taking your wife down, but can you try not to knock her up anymore? And all the men in the room guffawed. Q choked on the water that he'd been sipping. And Big Wood, who was only known for a little chuckle, laughed out loud. Manny said, seriously, the number of children who need to be protected has grown considerably. And as the 5 families change with the times and change the guard, reorganization will include more direct protection of those children. I'm not talking about glorified babysitters here. All of their parents have jobs to do for these families. Their villages are intertwined, interconnected, and therefore vulnerable. These last few months are proof of that. To answer some of the questions that I've heard whispered, yes, LJ is remaining as the right hand of my niece Angela. No, she is not vying to replace me as the head of the Lopez family. Yes, my goddaughter Anya is single, and while her brother trusts her to be able to choose for herself, Idra and I still don't. That means that if you hear or see anything that suggests she has a potential suitor, he and I need to be the first to know. So make sure that every man who reports to you understands that she's to be treated like she's our daughter. And failure to follow the proper protocol will be handled accordingly. Manny said that while making eye contact with the lieutenant Easy, because a little birdie named Mom Brenda had told him that while she had an affinity for Easy, Easy had an affinity for Anya. Manny said, with that said, in 2 days, a whole lot of issues gonna be shaken up. Take this time to relax, enjoy yourselves, eat, drink, catch up, pat yourselves on the back for a job well done. Meanwhile, at Angela and Stephanie's estate in Texas, Stephanie had just said to Regina, so what's the plan, sis? You gonna get your man back, or you gonna move on and get you a new one? Regina said, after all of the crap that I've been through, I don't want to think about, talk about, or see no damn man. I appreciate all the effort that LJ went through to get me out of that jam, but it was clear that I was just an obligation for him. He's over it, and I'm over him. Angela said, right. Regina said, I'm serious. Angela said, mm-hmm. And that's why you asked me 11 questions about where LJ was going to be this weekend. Regina said, I just wanted to know why my mother was going to have my children. Angela said, and what happened when you asked him? Regina said, I didn't. I didn't want him to get the wrong impression. I ain't want him to think I was worried about his movements. Stephanie said, it sounds like you are, though. Regina said, let me tell you something. The only reason I have to be concerned with the movements of any man is if that man has been assigned to my grocery order. And if I check the app on my phone and it looks like the shopper is taking too long in the produce aisle. Stephanie and Angela lost it. And damn near on cue, Rennie walked up. She said, I am so glad to hear that you're going to let my brother move on with his life. And I hope he get himself a little trim while he on his boys' weekend. Regina said, boys' weekend? Angela, I thought you said he was working. And Angela and Stephanie guffawed. Stephanie said, for somebody who don't care about his whereabouts, you reacted to that one real quick. Rennie said, because she lying. And the only person she fooling is her damn self. She know damn well she trying to pull a big Steph. Angela said, a what? Rennie said, a big Steph. She trying to get that man to marry her all over again. Well, I'm sorry to bust your bubble, but LJ ain't CT. LJ ain't a pastor. You was lucky to snag him the first time. With any luck, my brother gonna come home with a fine little spicy Latina, petite-like, with childbearing hips on his arm and in his bed. Angela said, all right now, Rennie, that's enough. Regina said, nah, let her cook. LJ's a single man. He could do whatever and whoever that he wants to. As long as he don't have nobody around my kids, I'm good. Stephanie said, now, Regina, that's not in your purview to control. You do know that, right? Regina said, the hell it ain't. Across the room, Catherine, the Queen Mother, and Tru were in the middle of a conversation of their own, and their conversation was about men too. Tru said, that's the long and short of it. I mean, all the rest of it is going to come out at the round table. Catherine said, you did your big one, baby girl. And both of those men put in some serious work on your behalf. Listen, I know how difficult it is to regain and rebuild trust. And I'm happy to see that you and Wood have found a way to work through that adversity. The Queen Mother said, the fastest way to rebuild trust is to do exactly what this young lady did. She agreed to all of that man's terms, made who she was checking for clear to anybody who had doubt, got her man back in the field for one last hurrah, boost his ego a little, laid a nigga down to save him, and then enlisted his help to save that other nigga. Yeah, you the truth. Tru bust out laughing. She said, you make it sound like I orchestrated all of that, Queen Bee. I played the cards I was dealt. I'm just good at it. But I learned from the best. Catherine said, that's right. Keep stroking that man's ego, affirming and reassuring him. Tru said, that's not what this is. Wood isn't even that kind of man. He doesn't need that. In unison, the Queen Mother and Catherine both said, that's what they all say. Then Catherine said, he has to choose to trust you. But you have to ensure that everything you do, everything you say, how you do it and how you say it, are always above board and above reproach. You can't afford to give him any reason to doubt you, where you are, what you're doing, or who you're doing it with. The Queen Mother said, especially considering the position that you're going to be in. Very few people will have a beat on where you are and what you're doing at any given time. Catherine said, and with him not being in the life anymore, he is not going to be able to just make a phone call and get a beat on you. The Queen Mother tapped in saying, usually it's the women who are in that position. I know you're used to moving at your own pace, Tru, following your own instincts, going where the assignment takes you, and doing whatever it requires. But the kind of love that you two have and the life that you want to have together is going to require that you move a whole lot different than you're used to. Catherine said, Bella and I are here for whatever you need. Believe you me, we are both in situations where we are learning that you can, in fact, teach an old dog new tricks. Ain't that right, Bella? At the same time, on the other side of the room, Anya had just finished signing to Mom Brenda, Mom Joyce, and Mrs. Ali just how much she appreciated their support after her recent divorce. When Mom Brenda suggested that Anya get back in the saddle, Anya signed for what? So another man can try to take advantage of me, my family, and my disability? I'm done letting men take things from me. The only thing another man can take from me is notes. Because I'm about to be a whole problem out here. Back in Puerto Rico, the fellas were not engaged in conversations nearly as deep as the ones that the ladies were having. They were enjoying the good food, the good drinks, and the good views, while all of the single men and the men who weren't single but were acting like it were being entertained by female members of the Bellamy staff. Q, Wood, and LJ were held up in a corner together, per usual. Neither Wood nor LJ were drinking in solidarity with Q, and they were discussing the arrangement that Q and Big Wood had made that they were hoping would calm Angela down and give Wood something to do with his time. In a matter of months, he was going to begin his education so that he could become a licensed clinical therapist. He'd enrolled in an online program so that he could be home with Genesis and handle the business that Q so desperately needed him for. When it was clear that no further conversation was going to be had with Q that was business related, all three of the men decided that it was time to call it a night. When they left the back room of Bellamy's, they were surprised to see that the entire nightclub was shut down. The waitstaff and busboys were smack dab in the middle of cleaning up. The band was breaking down their equipment. And the woman with the melodic voice who had been singing when LJ came in was nowhere to be found. LJ had been fully engaged in the gathering, but he couldn't get that woman's voice out of his head. As they all headed out to their separate vehicles, LJ was the only one who'd opted out of a chauffeured car. He knew that island like he knew the back of his hand. And while he would have security in tow, he didn't see a need for a driver. So he headed to the back parking lot where his vehicle was parked. And there she was, the songstress, even more beautiful up close, even more beautiful out of the cocktail dress and heels that she had been performing in. Dressed down in a pair of cut-off shorts, a tank top, and a pair of flip-flops. She looked like an around-the-way girl and the best that the island of Puerto Rico had to offer, all at the same time. And had the circumstances been different. LJ would have ignored the pull that he felt in his gut, disregarded it as lust, headed to his vehicle, and drove away. But the caramel-complected, petite-framed, wide-hipped beauty with the melodic voice was pulling her nearly waist-length curly hair up into a messy bun, preparing to reach inside the hood of her vehicle, a vehicle that was smoking, and LJ had to stop her before she got burned.
Brown skin glowing like the sun chose you. Every shade you wear got a story woven through